Hi everybody, meteorologist Joe Cioffi here, coming up on almost 5 minutes after 7 o'clock Eastern Time on this Tuesday, July 17th, 2018. A little bit of going in and out of focus there on the camera. Hope everybody had a good day. We had that severe weather that moved through pretty much right on schedule. If you watched the earlier live stream that we had around midday today, as we kind of debated on the models, because they all basically had different views of how this was all going to play out. It was probably one of those instances where a compromise of the three was the better solution. Maybe the NAM3 did a bit better in trying to show the strength of some of the thunderstorms, because the storms did hold together noticeably over New Jersey to about New York City and into western Long Island, and they weakened a bit as they moved to the east. But the storms were particularly fierce in parts of New England. I did happen to see one tornado warning in northeastern Connecticut and Windham County, along with a few other severe thunderstorm warnings that were peppered around. Certainly have seen worse outbreaks than this, but all of this in response to that very warm tropical air that's been sitting in the eastern part of the United States. So let's pull up. I'm going to first start off with the northeastern satellite view, and then we're going to go to the radar, and you can pretty well make out that developing line on the visible here. Very, very impressive how it just blows up. We experienced in a lot of areas maximum daytime heating that you could probably get in a situation like this. We had temperatures that reached the upper 80s and low 90s over a large area. The dew points were ridiculously high, up in the mid-70s. You had a lot of tropical air around, a very, very unstable atmosphere. Now, if you look on the northwestern edge of that cloud line, you kind of see there's a bit of a line that's hanging back. There is one last little sliver of thunderstorm activity that's showing up on the regional radar. Here's the view from the regional radar. The intensity of the storms on the lead line has diminished. There's still some heavy rains going on in some places. That is going to move out to the east and offshore. And then there's this kind of very narrow line of showers and storms in northeastern PA. It's trying to stretch out a little bit to the northeast and to the southwest. That is really where the cold front is, and that is going to come through later on, probably in another 3 or 4 hours or so. And then once that is done, that's when we get into the drier air that is coming in from the west and is going to make for 3 very nice days. By the way, there's one other area of severe weather to talk about tonight, at least from the standpoint of risk, and that is out in the southern plains on up into the central and northern Rockies. We have this rather large area of marginal risk, and then inside the area of slight risk that you see up in Wyoming and western Nebraska, northeastern Colorado, that's where we have a severe thunderstorm watch up at the moment. The severe thunderstorm watch that was up for parts of New York State, southern and southeastern New York State, eastward across New England, that is now just about gone, except for a small sliver. And as always, when you're watching this, if you're watching this live, it's fine. If you're watching this on a replay later tonight, remember, it's coming up on 10 minutes after 7 p.m. Eastern Time, so you're watching a dated radar. If you have severe weather going on in your area or the threat of severe weather, please be sure to check out your local National Weather Service office page, at which you can access at weather.gov. Okay, so where are we going with all of this as far as the next few days are concerned? Well, we've been talking about the fact that we are soon going to be enjoying a nice dry air mass, and I think that part of the equation remains pretty much on schedule. And we're going to bring up the GFS model here, if it lets me. And there you go. And I'll make it a bit bigger so we can just look at the focus on the map. Here's our front. This is for this evening at 8 o'clock, the front right on the coast. The GFS it's not showing radar echoes here. It's actually showing rainfall in terms of amounts, and it doesn't mean when you see something like this that it's raining everywhere it's green. It may have already rained in the prior 6 hours, so we're showing accumulated precip. We've got the big high that is coming down from the Great Lakes. Pressure-wise, this is not like the high from a couple of weeks ago, which had a pretty strong pressure, central pressure with it. Pressure here is about 1020, which is about average for July, but it is a nice shot of dry air that's going to be in for the rest of the week, and at least for the Northeast and into the Mid-Atlantic states. This front, by the way, goes pretty far south down into the Carolinas and across the Gulf states. Usually don't get fronts going that far south this time of year, but every once in a while they do happen. Now here comes the energy into the upper Midwest and for the weekend. And I'm going to move along to Saturday morning. Okay, this is on the new GFS, and we'll put it on the, I want to show you how this surface is shaping up, because it's pretty interesting. We touched upon this yesterday, and let me just make sure you guys can see it as I can. And there you go. So this is Saturday morning, and what we have is low pressure that's dropping down into southern Indiana. And there's actually a trailing warm front with this, which I will draw in. So you've got a bit of a warm front that extends from this low, pins down because of that high is kind of building down the Appalachians. You see this a lot in the wintertime. And then there's a second wave that's developing. It looks like a bit of a warm frontal wave that forms right along the or just east of the Delmarva Peninsula. An onshore flow is indicated, and the GFS at least wants to lift that low up almost straight northward, which would bring some rain here Saturday night into Sunday morning, and maybe even a little bit of some wind from the southeast, because the gradient is actually a little bit on the tight side. It's nothing crazy, but it is evident there. And we'll come back now to the model run to show you where this goes. In fact, I think what I'll do is I'll bring up the close east region here so you can see it a bit better. But that low moves straight northward. So this one, I think it might get actually a little breezy here Saturday night into Sunday morning. It does bring some rain in a bit faster, and then that lifts that low up to the northeast. And the problem is, because you have this deep upper trough to our west in the Ohio Valley that extends down into the eastern Gulf states, you're going to have this southerly flow along the eastern seaboard that's going to last for a while. This is Sunday morning. So with that southerly flow, there will probably be waves of downpours, not continuous. There will be breaks in all of this, but it does certainly indicate that we're going to have the chance for some rain every day starting Saturday night and into the first part of next week. This is a pretty wrapped up cutoff low that's sitting in eastern Kentucky, and the flow along the east coast becomes southerly. And remember, by the way, the something like this could be a big problem if there were a tropical storm off the southeast coast of the United States, or if it was east of the Bahamas. We don't see any kind of tropical system here, but the flow stays southerly as that trough just sits there in the east through Monday and gradually weakens. You can follow the flow from the Bahamas straight north into North Carolina, up the New Jersey coast, and into southern New England. That would be the pathway of moisture. There's probably a bit of a weakness here northeast of the Bahamas. I don't know if there's going to be any weather associated with that, but anytime you see something like this, as you go through hurricane season, you want to be a little bit careful just in case there is some tropical system out there, which right now, by the way, we don't have anything that's there, nor are the models even showing any kind of low developing there. Now, that trough gradually weakens, only to be replaced by another trough that tries to drop into the east, although it doesn't have as much success. It kind of drops over the western lakes later next week. We sort of have this southwest flow with the flat ridge off the Atlantic, and that I still think will probably mean for chances for some showers and storms through pretty much every day next week. And it's going to be a rather warm and humid week, although again, with the absence of a big ridge in the east, it's going to be difficult to make it hot, okay? But it certainly could be very warm on some days and rather uncomfortable. So here's how it looks on the surface. You bring that low up, the low that dives down into the Ohio Valley and just kind of rotates there and sits there. And you get these waves of showers going into Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday. And maybe by even Friday, you still got some stuff around, and into next weekend, still dealing with this. So this is a very, kind of a tropical look to this pattern. This shot of dry air coming down should be enjoyed over the next 3 days. And by the way, it isn't going to be especially cool this time around. A lot of people seem to be under the impression, not here on my YouTube channel, but at least on my Facebook page, it seems to be the case, where when you say it's not hot, it immediately gets translated into it's going to be extremely cold. This is not January. You can be 5 degrees below average this time of year, and you're still talking daytime temperatures in the low 80s for areas in and around New York City and New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania and southern New England. So you got to remember where you are geographically and the time of year that you're in. Cooler than average this year, instead of being a high of 86 or 7, might be a high of 83 or 4. That's just kind of how it looks. Now, I punched up because we're getting, we're into mid-July now, so we should really start to pay, some attention to what's going on in the tropics in terms of the flow. You do have a typical Atlantic ridge here. There are weaknesses. You've got a weakness well to the east, and you also have, a bit of a weakness. That weakness that's off the southeast coast. Again, no indication that there's any kind of tropical system here, and also no, at least when we look at this level of the atmosphere, we're not seeing anything out for the next 2 weeks, and at this point we're into August 2nd. But I will say, as we take a look at the surface here, I'm going to let me see if I can bring up the normal anomaly. I kind of like that map a little better. We may, we've been getting these tropical waves that have been trying to come off the African coast, and as each one comes off, they basically get destroyed by either the Saharan dust or the cooler than average ocean, strong wind shear, whatever it is. But it looks like as we get toward the end of the month, you've got this low that's approaching the Western Africa there. I'm not sure what nation that is, but there'll probably be some waves that will try and come off. Now, whether there's one here as we head towards, say, July 28th and 9th, this is going to be happening anyway. Sometimes the models pick up on these things and sometimes they don't. But for now, let's start to look to see where eventually that area of the world may become more active as we go into the Cape Verde season. One of the things that I have noticed is that the ocean water temperatures continue to moderate. They're not nearly as below average as we had just a few weeks ago. Let's see if I can pull up some of the sea surface temperatures here. Hang on. We'll bring up the 7-day anomaly. And you can see it here. This is off in the tropical Atlantic. Now, this is, remember, we were looking at areas here that were 2 and 3 degrees below average. Now it's more like near, this is a 7-day anomaly. It's near that 0 to -1. So it's just a little bit below average. And in terms of the actual temperatures, which we can bring up, the daily analysis of the temperatures, you want to look for that 26 degrees Celsius line as where you'll be supportive of tropical storm development. And you have it from just off the Atlantic coast Looks like it's basically along and south of 15 degrees north, and then you've got this push northward where that 26 degrees Celsius goes up almost to 35 north and about 55 west, and then runs back out into the western Atlantic. You can see the Gulf Stream, by the way, with the 28 plus water off the North Carolina coast, and then southeast of Long Island and New Jersey, well southeast of Long Island by a few hundred miles anyway, and then it runs out to the east northeast, and then it just kind of fades away as you get further out into the Atlantic. So, you know, there seems to be a bit of a normalization going on in terms of the ocean water temperatures out in the tropical Atlantic. They are warm throughout. Once you get west of 50, then you start getting into that 28 degrees Celsius water and some 30 degrees Celsius water. The Gulf of Mexico showing a rather large area, most of the Gulf of Mexico showing water temperatures above 86 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's actually supportive of major hurricanes to have water temperatures that high. The Caribbean is warm, but the Caribbean is kind of about average, 28C, maybe 29C in some of the warmest pockets. We'll probably see those numbers come up a bit more in the next couple of weeks. So we're going to start seeing the Atlantic getting a bit more active. Try to see if we can get, I'll bring up the satellite. We'll take the wide satellite view of the tropical Atlantic, and now we're going to the visible daytime. It looks as if, in terms of obvious upper lows that were sitting out in the subtropical Atlantic, they are not as standing out as they were. So those upper lows look to have weakened somewhat. You still have, where you see that brownish shading, you still have this African dust issue with the Saharan dust that's coming off the coast of Africa. The bright white cloud cover that you see on the lower right, okay, that is the latest tropical wave that is moving out. But again, with the Saharan dust and probably not ideal conditions, looks like there might be some northeasterly shear going on in the eastern Atlantic there. So right now, conditions don't appear to be favorable. And I guess with the pattern that's setting up along the East Coast, we'll probably want to at least watch to see if anything starts popping up in terms of thunderstorms east of the Bahamas, south of Bermuda. That's one place we'll probably want to watch over the next week or so with the pattern that we have shaping up in the eastern part of the United States. You always want to be a little careful when you've got you know, that trough in the east, the way it is looking. But as I said, right now there's nothing there that suggests that we're going to have any kind of tropical issues. So coming back to everybody who's on board tonight, I hope the weather wasn't too crazy where you were. Cullen's talking about the warnings in Connecticut, Long Island, Reaver 501. As we saw those thunderstorms weaken a bit as they moved over central and eastern Long Island, but as you pointed out, you got the rain. I did happen to see that Islip got 1.5 inches of rain, which is good. And it's only rained 3 times, I think, in the last 4 or 5 weeks in my neck of central Long Island. It's been very, very dry. So we at least made up for that to some degree with what happened today. Just finished the replay of the earlier live stream. Storm had a bigger back than bite for you, Timothy Veltman in upstate New York. That's it sure did. The storms looked pretty fierce when they were coming out of Pennsylvania, and that first band that went up through upstate into Massachusetts earlier today probably robbed up a little bit of the juice out of the atmosphere for when the second line. But the second line was fairly formidable, at least from the standpoint of rain. We didn't see many severe thunderstorm warnings south of Route 84. I didn't, other than the flash flood warning, I didn't see any severe thunderstorm warnings that came up for eastern Pennsylvania or for New Jersey. It was primarily a rain situation. David Fuller, happy birthday to you. I did see Edwin Harrow, I hope I said that right, the picture of the possible funnel cloud in New York Harbor. A couple of pictures I looked at, I was kind of questioning it. I didn't see any video of it, so it's hard to say whether, from the pictures it was hard to see there was any turning going on. But hope maybe somebody has a video somewhere. We'll see if that was indeed a funnel cloud. Would not surprise me, by the way, if it was, with some of the action that we had. Luke's vlogs. Okay, you want a shout out. Okay, you got your shout out. Here we go. Severe weather season has been a dud in Suffolk County. It sure has. It's been a dud for the last 5 years in Suffolk County, by the way. And Israel got his 1.5 inches. CPC does have, that's correct, Colin, well above normal precip over in the long range, which makes sense with the upper pattern that's shaping up. Joe Bastardi is calling it a hybrid system off the mid-Atlantic coast this weekend. Okay, we'll see. I don't know that it's something to get overly worked up about, but it's a tight little low. It's a warm frontal wave. For where it's developing, maybe it's a hybrid system. I just don't think it's going to have any time to develop into anything. If it was forming off the Georgia coast or off the Florida coast, then yes, then it would be a different situation. But I think it's probably going to be too fast and too far north. And it looks too frontal to me, frankly. Space and Earth weather's trapped in a major lightning storm. Hopefully got some good videos. I did see that there were a lot of lightning strikes from these thunderstorms when they developed late this morning and this afternoon. That part of the radar seemed very, very, certainly very, very busy. Problem was, Timothy Veltman says, that the rain was heavy enough that the tree branches weren't used to the weight and they started breaking from just the rain. No kidding. That's pretty interesting. There are parts of upstate New York that are that are bone dry, especially up in north central New York where everything is just brown. It's amazing what's happened up there from the winter and spring, because they've kind of gone from swinging wildly from one extreme of being very wet with the snow melt, and then going to very, very dry. Dio, funnel clouds are the beginnings of a tornado. They're just basically, they haven't touched the ground, and that's, a tornado is when a funnel cloud touches the ground. They are in the formative stages, and there are funnel clouds that show up all the time, but not many of them get to the point of strength where they extend themselves down to the surface. But if you have a severe thunderstorm and you get that wind starts turning, if you go and read some of the discussions from earlier today from the Storm Prediction Center, they did talk about the winds, strong winds extending down and with possible turning, and pointing to the possibility that there could be a tornado or two, or even a supercell or two. They did indicate that. Scott Briller, I know it's only mid-July, but with you and Joe commenting that there may not be any extended heat, is there a good chance Central Park has no more official heat waves? Well, look, I mean, right up through the end of August into the early part of September, if you've got the pattern where you get the ridge in the east, you could certainly still pull off several days or more of 90-degree plus. I mean, that's actually, we've had heat waves of some long heat waves on record that started in late August into early September that lasted for many days. I would say that as long as we keep seeing this tendency for troughing in the east, or at the very least, as long as we are not seeing big ridges building in the eastern part of the United States and locking in for days and days at a time, it is going to be very, very difficult to string more than a couple of days in a row of 90-degree weather. And of course, once you get deeper into August, 90 becomes a bit tougher to achieve, especially for coastal areas. Usually after about 90-degree highs on Long Island, for example, after the middle part of August, it's pretty rare. And you start to see the shortening days, the lower sun angle. You have to start getting deep in the heart of a very warm air mass. And one of the things that we haven't had this summer so far, we haven't really seen prolonged heat in the eastern part of the United States that's been building for days and weeks at a time, and where that hot air eventually just takes over and moves further east and then covers the eastern states for a week to 10 days. We had that one stretch at the beginning of July that lasted about 8 days. That to me was more humidity than heat, and it was a very uneven heat wave. There were spots in New Jersey that hit 90 degrees 7-8 days in a row, and yet there were other spots to the east that had a tough time stringing 3 days in a row of 90-degree weather. So, if the pattern stays the way it is, it's going to be really hard to put together that, the 3-day definition of a heat wave. This is why I'm not a fan of the 3-day definition, and I like the 5-day definition better, because, you could string 3 days of 90 degrees in a row randomly throughout a summer, many times. But 5 days is a lot tougher to do, and I would suggest that maybe if you want to use the 5-day rule, now this may be famous last words, that looks to me like it's going to be a very, very tough thing to do, unless we get a big, the pattern flips again and we go to some kind of ridge in the east. That's going to be, that's key. For the latter part of the summer, you got to get that ridge into the east, and you got to keep it there for a while. Otherwise, you're sort of, running into the mid and upper 80s. You get the odd day of 90 here, 90 to there. In fact, for tomorrow, Wednesday here, because of the low humidity and the northwest wind, it's going to be very dry and relatively comfortable. But temperatures are going to be well up into the 80s. I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple of 90-degree readings show up at a few places, but the humidity is going to be the big difference because dew points are going to be down in the 50s. The longest heat wave on record in New York City Central Park, it's 12 days of 90 plus. I don't recall the year off the top of my head, so you're going to just have to be a little patient with me here. Let me see if I can pull it up quickly. Let's see, Central Park. Okay. I'm trying to find the right page. Climate. Okay. That's not the one. Hang on. It's got to be here somewhere. No, that has to be from there, so let's see if I'm just not seeing the link. Normals, temperature, okay, here we go. Hang on. All right, longest heat waves. I'll put the link up for you guys if you want to take a look, and this is on the New York City National Weather Service, weather.gov/OKX. 12 days is the length. In fact, hang on, I'll put it up on the screen. How's that for service here? Hang on one second. So let's put this up on the screen so you guys can see it. And I'll try to make it a bit bigger. So there's your longest heat wave. And notice the longest heat wave, by the way, August 24th to September 4th, 1953. That included 2 days in that stretch where the temperature hit 100, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days in a row where the temperature was 95 or higher. And then you have July 23rd to August 2nd, 1999, with 11 days. 2 heat waves that tie for with 10 days, the 7th through the 16th of July, and August 4th to the 13th. And by the way, go a little further down. If you look down near 8 days. Here's one, August 28th to September 4th, 1973, where you had 8 consecutive days of 90-degree highs. So there you have it. There's the answer to your question with regards to the heat wave. And again, that 12-day heat wave, oddly enough, comes at the end of August, beginning of September. So you gotta figure there must have been a very big ridge that was up in the eastern part of the United States. I just put the link up for those of you who want to take a look at this. You can go to weather.gov/OKX. If that link doesn't work, it should work. But if it doesn't work, You can go to their local page and just go to the climate section, and you'll find it there under Central Park extremes, temperatures, extremes, average highs, average lows. The link is on that page. And yes, that was brutal. Since it was 1953, I imagine that most people did not have air conditioning at that time. July 77 was a killer, especially with the blackout. Agreed. I remember that one very well, and I think that ultimately, I think that was one of the days where Central Park on the hottest day got to 104. I hope there are some dry slots between impending wet weather systems. Can't get anything done outside. I don't know. That kind of, Cullen, I think it kind of looks like we're going to have threats every day. It may not necessarily rain in every single spot every day, but somebody's going to get something every day starting from late Saturday. By the way, should point out the European model with this low for Saturday night is much further to the east and takes that low into southeastern New England, which keeps us out of rain for much of the weekend. So just bear that in mind, that just because the GFS has got this, the Europeans got a bit of a flatter solution with this. So we have to wait and see, if that winds up getting resolved in that direction. To me, because of the way the trough is, initially would argue for the fact that the low may want to go out more east than north, but the GFS does turn the flow more southerly along the east coast a bit faster than the European does, and that could be the big difference here. We'll have to see whether the GFS is right or not. Your dad, David Schwartz, worked in the South Bronx at the time of the blackout. I lived in the Northeast Bronx at the time, by the way. And they looted the store where he worked, and not there for the looting. Yeah, in those days, that was that part of New York was kind of tough. A lot of areas, with the blackout had issues. Sun now trying to come out with a rainbow in Oakdale for Stephen Franco, who deserves a rainbow every single day. Good for you. If you get a shot of that rainbow, post it on my Facebook page if you would. Friendly Frost. That rings a bell, David. The name Friendly Frost does ring a bell to me as someone who grew up in the Bronx. Israel, it does have, that low for Saturday to Sunday. It does, it's got a frontal look for a system that you would see, in the fall, winter, or spring months. Obviously, we're not, it's not the winter time, but it's interesting how the model with that, cold upper low that drops down into the eastern parts of the Ohio and Tennessee Valley, and you wind up generating a surface low in Indiana with a warm frontal wave off the North Carolina coast that wants to run up toward the northeast. So the dew points are going to be climbing over the weekend, David. They're probably going to get, at least, depending on the temperatures, if the temperatures make it up into the 80s, I'm thinking the dew points will probably make it up into the upper 60s and low 70s with that onshore flow. That is that wind from the east-southeast. All right, folks, we're going to end it right here at this point. Thanks, everybody, for being on tonight. I really appreciate it. Those of you who shop on Amazon, you've got about a little less than 4.5 hours to get something on their Amazon Prime sale, and you can link to that from the Joe Stradamus link on the description of this video, or if you're watching this later on tonight from the video library. I'm a part of the Amazon Services Associates Program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed for a means for you to earn fees by linking to Amazon and affiliated sites. So if you shop on Amazon, you use my link, Amazon throws me back some coin, you get your stuff at the great Amazon prices, and it's a great way to support my channel. Thank you very much. And just also to mention the fact that I have a similar setup with Ebates. You can get additional discounts on Amazon if you use Ebates. So there's a link there for that, and I'm part of the affiliate program with the Ebates, and it's a way for me to earn free fees from them when you link and when you join up and sign up to Ebates. Thank you very much for being here tonight. The Joe and Joe Weather Show tonight on Facebook. We'll shoot for 9:15. We've been having issues with trying to, zero in on the exact time. So, yeah, Freever, thanks. I appreciate that. But we try and shoot for 9:15, so we'll go over what went on today, and we'll take it from there. Thanks for letting me know, Israel, about the audio. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else I need to tell you guys. No, we're pretty much set here. So have a great evening, and we will see you later on the Joe and Joe Show on Facebook. Meteorologist Joe Cioffi is my Facebook page, or on Joe Rayo's Facebook page, Joe Rayo Weather. Good night, everybody. See you tomorrow.